I see there's a lot of domestic abuse and domestic violence going on, and unfortunately, it's in our community.
Well,
It's a lot of it's
let
not
me
just,
draw some statistics. Just Google what percentage of Black women are victims of domestic violence. And it says in comparison, 31.5% of all women will experience domestic violence. However, a report from National Center of Victims of Crime found that 53.8% of Black women had experienced psychological abuse, while 41.2% of Black women had experienced physical abuse. More disturbingly, Black women are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered by men than white women.
wow, wow,
By their spouses.
wow, yep,
So that's what we're talking about.
wow. Thank you. Now, that tells the story right there.
Yeah. We can go into some of the causes, what we think are the causes.
Yeah.
That's what I was just about to say. We probably need to examine like what we believe or what could. I don't know if you will ever get down to truly what the cause is.
Yeah.
There's maybe a belief of what we think the causes could be.
Well, I think that there are some, like now once again, I think that there are some statistical facts that we have to look at that are just factual, just are true.
Right.
For instance, like poverty, that is also that's a determinant. Single parent household, I think a lot of times that's the determinant. Those things, I think we still got to look at those in a nutshell, because there are things in the Black community that we may experience, joblessness,
Yeah.
Black male, that's a determinant.
Yeah, I'm about to ask you that. Like, do you guys think that society, the way society is structured, does it put a certain level of burden on Black males that in many ways it turns out violently to the ones that are closest to them? So what I mean by that is when you don't have a sense of control, sometimes you try to control other things.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Or when you don't have, when society pushes this idea of roles, right? And not saying I'm against any type of role definition or whatever. What I'm saying is like there is a push within our society that this is what men do, this is what women do. And if you are a man who you like, say you don't contribute at all, right? Or you're not doing anything for the household. And the one place you can have control is over that woman.
Right.
Right. The one person you're stronger than is that woman.
Yeah.
Because at work, you can't tell your boss off.
Right.
At work, you can't put your hands on your boss.
Right.
But at home, all of it comes out, and it may not be meant to come out that way.
Right.
But is it, and I'm not blaming society and at all to say,
cool.
It's society's fault that Black men are this way. But like does these, with the kids we mentor, sometimes environment plays a major role. So could these outside factors play a role in the behavior?
Yeah,
absolutely. But I would also add that when aren't outside factors ever playing a role in how we respond? It's how we respond to those outside factors that make a difference, right? A lot of sugar, honey, iced tea isn't fair, okay? But it's like how you handle it. Like if your boss chews you out, you don't go home and take it out on your wife.
No, you shouldn't. Yeah, you're right.
So it's really how Black men handle these outside factors that make a difference in a relationship. And quite frankly, it's also how Black women also handle the outside factors that make a difference in a relationship, right? Because whether we look at our entertainment, whether we look at even sometimes in the church, You know, the Bible, what the Bible say, if he don't work, he don't eat, right?
Yeah.
What Beyonce said, you know, what is our entertainment saying?
Getting back to this abuse thing, it has become a huge issue in the Black community, and a lot of it comes from brothers, Black men not being able to control their anger, and they themselves coming from a position, being raised up in families where they themselves have been deprived, by either father not being there, father being in jail, not being able to give them the upbringing that they need. And so they themselves, they're dealing with self-esteem issues. And so when a girl says, rejects them, and when they have rejection in their life, their first attitude is, to do away with that person. And they can't handle it. And I see this more and more of situations where the guys are just losing it. And there's one guy, I saw one guy even last week, wound up actually tracking his girl down. She moved away, changed her number. He's asking around about her. He wound up finding her and going in and killing her. Of course, and just all because most of this is because the woman wants to reject them, doesn't want to stay with him for whatever reason. And let me say this too, because I also said, I made a comment down in the comments on that particular one, or the one I was mentioning earlier about this girl being taken down from New Jersey down to where he lived, that women themselves have to make better choices from the beginning. You got to make sometimes better choices. I know people can change midstream, but what I've seen, now I'm going to say this too, that this does have something to do with what we're talking about, is that a lot of women say they don't want a thug. A lot of women say, but they wind up getting a thug. A lot of women say they don't want somebody that's abusive, but a lot of times women find themselves in abusive situations. A lot of women say that they don't want a troublemaker, but they wind up being with a troublemaker. Now I'm not blaming the woman for being, for the abuse at all. But I think even as a woman, you can't get to a point where you are allowing somebody else to control your entire life, where you're completely depending on him, especially not married. She took, and even the comments were saying pretty much, women were saying that too, that you don't let some dude take you away from your family, from your friends, from your loved ones, and you completely depend on she was even completely dependent on him financially. She didn't even have a job. He worked. So he cut her credit cards off and everything when he got mad at her, and so, those type of dynamics, should draw some red flags, when it comes to dating, and this is on dating.
What's funny?
But I'm sorry, Troy. Go ahead, Troy.
No, I was about to say, because on that topic, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's been 2 incidences where I have witnessed, I've been there, I was in the vicinity of a guy and a girl being abusive to each other, right? And the guy obviously having the upper hand. One time was on a MARTA train, it was teenagers. And I mean, in many ways, I think our culture perpetuates this. And I'm just gonna be honest, like the culture perpetuates this. When you watch any of these shows, from the Real Housewives of Atlanta to Bad Girls Club to whatever it is, right? There's always this high yelling in the face, pushing, pulling, hitting, right? It's always this type of it's almost like it's cool. I remember when I was in college, my best friend, right? She said this to me, right? Because I was telling me and Crystal really don't argue. We were in college, and we were talking about it, and I was like, me and Crystal really don't argue. What is it to argue about? We don't really argue. And she's like, well, y'all must not really love each other if y'all don't argue, because there's no passion in your relationship. I was like, passion comes in a totally different form for me and Crystal. It don't come cursing each other out. Right. That's not how we show passion to each other. Right. You know what I mean? I don't need to curse her out to show that I'm passionate and that I'm madly in love with her. Right. I express that totally different, you know? But she was so warped in her thinking of what a passionate relationship looks like. because for her, it was the makeup, you know, the makeup relationship, the makeup love making. And I was like, that's not what you call passion, is him getting out anger.
But keep this in mind, because we still talking about women, right? We talk about women, and we need to also have an equal focus on the men, because there's a reason why those young ladies are like that.
Yeah,
and
that's what I think. I think we're doing that. I mentioned that.
Yeah.
I mentioned
it's because they didn't have men in their lives.
Exactly.
To show them what safe love looks like, what healthy love looks like. And they didn't see their mother. They probably didn't see their mothers in healthy relationships. And this is why I say it's definitely not a woman thing, and it's definitely not a man thing. It's the fact that within our culture, and I'm going to leave entertainment out of it because that's an outside influence. We all can make choices as far as what we choose to learn and how we choose to be. And the problem is that there are not enough examples of Black women and men relating towards each other.
Amen.
That's really, and that's a cultural problem. And that's why I say it's not a Black woman or a Black man thing. It's a cultural problem. It's both. It's all our problems.
Right.
But even when you talk about, to Troy's point, and we're bouncing back. We're talking about men and we're talking about women. And I think we have to talk about the deficiencies that we both come from, the areas of deficiency that where we both come from, whether it be a man or a woman, like you mentioned that, a lot of them don't know what love is. They haven't seen that. And so when somebody shows them, I think my mama told me this, somebody showed, you a little attention, you lose your mind, so, but I think you're right, and I want to say this, since we are recording, there should be no time in your life or nothing that will get you so upset at a woman that you willing to kill her. Matter of fact, let's back it up to where you even want to put your hands on her. And let me back it up further than that. But you even have to curse her. Thank you, Troy. You have to curse her out. You have to cuss at your boyfriend. Cuss at your girlfriend, or curse your husband, or curse your wife out. There should be no situation like that. I know sometimes we get heated and sometimes we make mistakes, but definitely not putting your hands on another woman. Now, this goes for women and men now too. I'm not just talking about men, men putting their hands on women. I'm also talking about women put on him, but the majority of times, it's the other way around. It's the abuse that many men put on the women, and women, for the most part, find themselves on the the bad end of the stick. But brothers, we have got to be able to maintain control of our anger. We got to be able to maintain control and not get out of control. And allow someone, just because someone does not want to be with you anymore for whatever reason, you got to learn to be able to go on, and that's one of the reasons why, I said some of these guys, that's why mental illness, man, it's just a major issue in our community, getting help, getting counseling for different issues. And we just don't do that, and we don't know how important that is, because there's no way that somebody who was injured can carry on a good relationship. It's not going to happen. And so I just had to say that to the men out there, that we've got to get ourselves under control. Anytime you put your hands on another woman, brother, you are out of control, period.
So I'm going to, I guess, mention some real life experiences that have caused me to really want to put my hands on a woman. I ain't even gonna lie. Okay. Have you ever, I don't know if you want to call it mental illness or crazy, late years down the line, I had a woman, I was like, you know what, this isn't working. She locked herself in my guest bedroom and told me to call the cops. And it was like, I'm not leaving.
Okay. That's what I said earlier. It doesn't matter whether it's a woman or a man, to be honest.
Yeah.
It does not matter. You don't put your
But-
hand, you don't put your hands on your significant other at any level at all. I mean, and the expectation, and you even see a lot of discussions about this as well, is that, and it was even a question that was raised: if a woman hits you, should you be able to hit her back? That's the question. Now, I couldn't, I just, that's a very difficult. That's one of those tough talk questions,
That is a very tough talk question, because as Sean Jones said, if you would have got hit in your head with that iron,
Yeah.
what would have been your reaction?
Back.
Right?
Yeah.
That's go ahead.
When I was I probably was like 19, I had a girl just, totally go bananas and crazy because I wouldn't take new pictures of her. And she just went ballistic. And I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, I know how to pick them. I know that's what you're thinking. But
But, when a woman could, the woman, when somebody hits you and you're already in the middle of a raging argument, whatever that is, the first instinct is to retaliate physically back. Right. Just to be honest, but reality has to dawn upon you, and has to surface in your head that, okay, number one, you have to think about it regardless of whether you like it or not. Number one, I'm a man and she's a woman. and there are consequences, and oftentimes there are consequences for those, because and many times if a woman hits you, it depends on if she hits you with her hand. If she hits you with her hand, 9 times out of 10, it's not gonna be something that's gonna physically hurt you, versus something that's object, an inanimate object. But at the same time, if she hits you with her hand, are you going to hit her back, with your hand and with your fist, which means that most likely you will probably injure her, hurt her, and to the point it could be severe. So those things have to come across in your mind. Number one, it's still not cool to hit a woman regardless. Let me just say that off the top. It's still not, even when a woman hits you, it still ain't cool for you to hit a woman. This is my opinion. Now, a lot of guys going to say, no, bro, no, she hit me like that, I'm gonna hit her back. So I understand that, but I'm just being honest, because, we're bigger vessels, we're stronger. So those are factors. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that there's no case that it shouldn't happen, but I'm just saying those types of scenarios have to play in your mind, in your decision making.
Hey, Jones, I have a question for you.
Go ahead, bro.
With those women, right?
Right.
Ones who have been
violent
or
destructive
and looking for some type of confrontation.
Yes.
Honest question. Did you see glimmers of those behaviors?
Hell no. I was with their representatives. I was with their representatives, man. I was with one, but I'll tell you one thing that they all had in common: there were no fathers in their lives. Every single last one of them, no fathers. But I'll tell you what, I mean, there's been a couple of situations where I've dated women they grew up with fathers, and they would go and swing, and I would have to grab them. You know how do you grab the arm grab, like you see in the movies, and say, look, we not doing that. If you can't comply with that, then you got to go. I don't care how long we've been together, what we've been through. If you gonna put your hands on me, you got to go today, not tomorrow. You ain't got to think about it. I need a decision right now. If you can't keep your hands to yourself, because you know what happened years ago, I did 4 days in jail. And in those 4 days, I met at least 20 guys who they was locked up because they girls said whatever to the police when they came. And whether it was true or not, they was in there for domestic situations.
Right.
And I said, okay, because I had been in another relationship, whereas we used to get into arguments and fights, and she called Popo. Popo never came and arrested me. They would be like, look, we don't see any marks, any bruises. She's yelling and screaming and acting crazy, and you're calm, and we don't know who to blame. Now, if we come back again, somebody going to jail. But we're not going to arrest you, but we suggest that you go stay someplace else until this situation cool off. And I did that like 3-4 times. And so
what made you stay in that relationship?
Children.
Knowing it was not the first time it got to that point. You know, you said 3-4 times. So that means, you know, you allow it happened more than once.
Well, children. It was my
Gotcha.
wife. It was my first wife.
Gotcha.
So children. And I was also going through some growth. We were both going through some growth issues. I think we probably started out too young, and we were both going through some growth and maturity issues. And it took me a while to actually say to myself, I don't want this. This is not what I want out of my life, where I got to worry about this, that, and the third. And I mean, I'll tell you something, even in that same relationship, man, a neighbor heard us arguing and then it stopped. So the neighbor thought that I had done something to her. So she called the police. Now I'm watching the wrestling. I'm watching WWE wrestling at the time. And the cops come knocking at the door. I'm calm and cool because the argument was like 45 minutes ago. She went upstairs and went to bed. And I stayed downstairs and watched TV. They came into the house and it was like, we're just calling to check because a neighbor called and said that, they heard a disturbance. So I said, okay, well, fine. I mean, everything's good here, cool here. They said, well, we got to check on your wife. So I said, okay, well, she upstairs. So I'm talking to the cop downstairs and I hear yelling and screaming upstairs.
Oh, wow.
Next thing I know, he's dragging her downstairs because it was a 2-story townhome.
Oh,
he's dragging her downstairs, like holding on to her, like they wrestling and she trying to get away, yelling and screaming. I'm like, yo, calm down. What's going on? What are you doing? And the other cop is like, got his hand on his gun, telling me, don't move. And I'm like, yo, y'all blowing this out of control. It was just a simple argument.
Yeah.
And so to make the long story short, they took her to jail that night. I had to wait for them to file the police report. And then I could go, get a copy, go down there, get a copy of the police report and bail her out. So I had to wait for her to be processed, in other words, like 3:30 in the damn morning. Went, bailed her out, brought her home. We didn't say not one word to each other because I was tired as hell. I had to go back to court and tell a judge that she's safe. I know this all sounds fantasy because it sounds fantastic when I say it, but this is my life, okay? And so, but again, that was a situation where she did not have a father in her life. And when that father is not there, you don't, women, put it like this, because we talked about control, right? Women define control in different ways. So in situations where the guy cut up her credit cards, another woman would look at that and be like, well, maybe that wasn't control. Maybe that's him being responsible, believe it or not. We don't have tight-knit definitions on how to relate to each other or how not to relate to each other, whether it's control, whether it's a healthy situation. So I used to get into a lot of arguments in that same relationship because she thought I was trying to control her. And I'm like, I'm not trying to control nothing. I'm just telling you, this is what I need right here to make us work. If you can't do that, no, you're trying to control me. Da, da, da. You know what? I don't need this. I'm good. That's what guys got it. And that's what I had to learn to start saying. I don't need this. I'm good. My peace is more important to me than this, whatever this is now. I might know how to pick them. Maybe I don't know, but I do know that my peace is more important than arguing and fighting and fussing all the time about something that, you know, probably not going to change because we don't know how to relate to each other.
I
That's
agree.
the story.
I agree. I agree with that. I mean, I think you hit, I mean, there's a lot you hit on, right? I had this conversation like a month ago with a friend. We were talking about basically like the modern day woman, right? So this is a totally different subject, but it's still on the same thing. Abuse came up, but we were talking about the modern day woman. So Duncan, you was alluding to this about women wanting a certain type of man and so on and so forth, right? But there's been this push or this idea of the modern day woman, mainly Black woman, right? And it was around Kevin Samuels, you know, the discussion was, but like, you know, that there's a lot of Black women who are going to college. Women in general are outdoing men when it comes to collegiate education. Black, white, Asian women are like killing it right now in higher education.
Absolutely.
But particularly in the Black community, it's, you know, this has been a subject, right? Because Kevin Samuels became a very big person, and you know, this came out within the Black community. Black women are climbing the ladder very fast, very quickly. Right. And we're talking about the modern woman and the fact of like, you know, how the modern woman is in the household. Duncan, you alluded to this. A lot of women can't cook. And, you know, there's this idea that women are making more than men and they're emasculating men. And, you know, this whole thing, right? We were having this conversation. And we start talking about marriage. And I was saying, like, the funny thing is we talk about, you know, back in the day, there were more Black women who were married, which is factual. If you look at the data, it's factual. Yeah. But what we don't talk about is their home life was not great, right? So we like to say they were married, but if those women could have gotten divorces, they probably would have. Right? If it was something they could have done, because we never talk about the abuse that they went through. If you talk to, like, there's been, I remember we talked, my wife, one of her mentors, when her husband died, right? A lot of it came out, right? The woman was happy that man passed away. He used to beat the hell out of her, right? But they were married for like 40 something years. You know what I mean? Like, is this, you know, there's this thing that we never talk about. So like, this abuse, this power, that's why I was saying, is it, you know, is some of this societal, right? Like, as men, we are raised in this almost like a cesspool of like power, you know, like we get this power trip, like it has to be this way, it has to be our way. We're told we run the household, like, and Duncan, I know you're a preacher, right? So, but biblically, we're told, you know,
you
run the household, you know, like, and when there is a push or shove against it, does it break what we have been built as? You know what I mean? Like, we've been built as these people to, like, you know, it's my way or the highway type thing, you know, like, do we have to reconstruct our own mind frame, our own culture as men? And not saying we need to feminize ourselves, but like, you know, is it that we probably need to like reconstruct or like reevaluate how we're raising our young men as well?
You know, that's, you know, it's kind of, you unpacked a lot of stuff there, boy. A lot of stuff for me to think about. Now you did go back and you talked about how it was back in the day, you know, when parents stayed together for something years. Now that's in the abuse that potentially was in the household. That's definitely not everybody, and that's not, you know, my parents and you know, my wife's parents. You know, it was raised back in the early, you know, the mid 1900s. You know, that's definitely not, you know, everybody, but that did happen because their women just didn't have a lot of rights. That men even had to respect. So, but I guess, but I'm gonna make 2 points. First point is, you know, I do agree, Troy, that I think we as men and women have to really reconstruct our thinking when it comes to even to marriage and it comes to expectations in marriages. I think because the times have changed. They're not. We're not in an industrial society like we were back in the 1900s. This is completely, we're in a different technological society now. Things are different. Women are now working. They're not staying at home just raising up the family. So there has to be an adjustment on both sides, which means that, and I have to use my own household as an example. My wife works, and I work. But at the same time, I'm the cook in the house. I do 95% of the cooking in the house. 95% of the cooking in the house. That means breakfast, snacks for the children. Number one, I like it. It's just something that I do. And I think I'm pretty good at it.
You're a hell of a cook, bro. You could throw down in the kitchen.
Really? But and see, that's also what her father did for them. Her father was the cook in her household. And so that's what she's, I think she's kind of used to that. But, at the same time, my wife does provide. She does, financially as well. She comes, and so we're never not in need of anything. And we both make adjustments. So we don't play hold to those traditional type of roles in the household. And that's why it's important that I always say to people, it's whatever works in your household.
Yeah.
What my household works in your household may not work in my household.
Exactly.
Works in your household where he's paying all the bills and whatever, and you're doing that may work for you all. It may work for me that we're having joint accounts or separate accounts. It's literally whatever works in your household. That's why I believe that nobody can tell you what you should do in your household.
No, in fact, people. I had to say to a female friend one day, because you're talking about this roles, right? Role definitions, right? And I was like, name a great chef. And she said the guy Ariel, the guy who has the pots and pans, you know what I mean? I was like, that's a man though. I was like, you haven't named a woman yet. Right? But that's not a man role to cook. I was like, every famous chef is a man.
That's true.
Like, think about it, right?
Just about.
Right. So if I'm cooking 90% in the household, you can't expect me to bring in all the bread and to cook all the time at the same time and try to watch the kid. Those expectations are not realistic. And the same thing for my wife. I'm not going to let my wife, if she has to work, I'm not just going to let her, okay, I'm going to sit around and wait till she finishes before anything starts getting cooked or whatever. That's just not fair. We got 2 little kids. Yeah. But there are a lot of men, to your point, Troy, that have it in their mind that the woman is still, she deals with the, she's the nurturer. She deals with the household things, and the guy provide, and that mentality is still in existence in 2020. And that's not realistic. You're not being realistic. You're trying to hold on to traditional goals and traditional values in an untraditional time. That's this period. But let me say this too. We're talking about and then I think Troy and Sean, y'all mentioned something about, you're talking about abuse. And you're talking about, so let me share something. Now growing up in my household, there was a lot of frustration with my dad. My dad did provide for the family, no question. And my parents are still together, 40 something, almost 50 years. But anyway, my dad dealt with a lot of frustration because it was 4 of us in the household. Now he provided. Don't get me wrong. He was pretty much that foot the bill. My mother pretty much took care of the house for the most part. But I saw firsthand the frustration that was in my father. I saw it firsthand, and I felt it firsthand, physically. Because when my dad was young, he would even tell you probably today that he was a little bit over the top. He would tell you that he was over the top when he was younger. And my dad was physically, I took it to a point where I thought it was abuse. Because I thought that number one, you shouldn't have warts on your behind. I think that's you're taking it to another level. And my dad didn't spank us. We got whoopings. I mean, it was just like on a different level. and that was when I was real young. It got better as I got older, but I saw the frustration of my daddy having to go to work all the time, having to struggle with 4 of us to feed in the household, plus my mother. And so that's part of the frustration I think that the Black community goes through, that may not always be there in the white community. Not to say that they don't deal with the same situations, but that is more so in the Black community. And so today, our relationship, we're still healing through that, getting counseling through that, literally even today, because that scarred me so bad, and what I dealt with when I was smaller. So it is definitely true that economic issues, definitely have a lot to do with domestic abuse.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Did your dad grow up with his father in the house?
He did.
Was his dad tough on him?
Yeah, I think so.
It was generational.
I think it was more so my mother was real tough on him. I mean, his mother was tough on him than it was his dad. But I don't, we haven't sifted through all of those dynamics, as far as when he's concerned. But I know my dad dealt with a lot of frustrations coming back from Vietnam. Those sorts of things had a lot to do with it. But just being able to try to, you have to think of it, man. For a Black male to try to, and you have to think about it. This is the time of this is the time of the early 70s. I was born in 1969. My brother was born in 1967. So this is the early, late 60s, early 70s.
2 years
right
after King died.
Yeah. Right after in 69, that's kind of an example that I have, similarly that I can share. But the reality is, man, economics and has a lot to do, unfortunately, with domestic violence. Yeah.
It does, but it goes back to what I said earlier. With all these influences and traumas and generational challenges that the African American has experienced, it still always comes back to how you respond to it. I'm not saying that, you can overcome it and this, that. I'm saying if you need some help, go get some help, go talk to somebody. But it's all in how we deal with those stresses that ultimately makes a difference.
Yeah, but like, to your point, and I mentioned that not only economics, but like I said, there's, outside, the environmental situations that really make it very difficult. So it was just not economics, but a combination of those things that make it very difficult. And like I said, it's easy for us to say that, it's about how you respond, maybe for us to say when we maybe had a little different upbringing versus somebody, and we mentored children who come from families like versus somebody who literally doesn't know better. I mean, you think people that literally doesn't know any better, who hasn't had those, like you mentioned earlier, I think Sean, had those role models in their lives, had those type of cultural teachings in their lives, about, how you're supposed to respond. But when you see other dudes acting violently in your community and they're trying to solve a problem that way, you're going to tend to do the same thing. And that's one of the problems. You mentioned, generational curses, and those becomes a generational cycle.
Or if that becomes your culture.
Right, in culture.
It becomes culture.
And
right?
just
Like that becomes cool. And that's a dangerous thing, right? Like in our culture, as men, culturally, right? If you walk away from a fight, you're considered a sucker. You see what I'm saying? Like
fight with a woman or a man?
With a man, right? It's a thing of like having to be strong, right?
Okay.
But there's been even a push. I think I can't remember what incident happened. Maybe it was the Beyonce thing, but I remember when it was a push of like this idea of if a woman puts her hand on you, you have every right to put your hand on a woman. I remember that was like a big push. It was all on all the radios. It was the talk of the town. Like on every like talk radio type thing, it was like, and it was mom saying it, like if a woman put her hand on my son or that type, I mean, it became a thing, like it was accepted. And not saying it's okay for women to put their hand on men, but it's not like, it was not like these women are beating them down, and sometimes the women are pushing them or pulling at them or whatever, and this dude would just turn around and clock her.
Right.
You know I mean? It's not the same, right?
Right. It's not the same.
Grab your shirt is not the same as punching you in your face, right?
Yeah.
You know, like it's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's this type of thing that sometimes we make things culturally, we make it okay, and it should not be, but we have made it sometimes okay. And that's what I was saying with like a lot of these shows that a lot of young people watch, you know, these Real Housewives or like these shows where they have like the Love and Hip Hop, for instance. Love and Hip Hop always have scenes like that, right? The girlfriend takes up something, throws it at him, pulls his shirt, rips his shirt off, you know, like it's that fighting, right? And then, you know, the next episode, they're back in love together. You know what I mean? And that's what I saw on that train. I was telling you guys, these teenagers on a train, right? Yeah. I'm on the train. I always stand when I'm on the train. This was a few years before COVID, and we're on the train, and they are going at each other. He's calling her B-I-T-C-H, calling all types of names, ho, da-da-da. I mean, and there's people, all types of people on this train, man. Like, they're not even embarrassed to have such a conversation. This not even it's an argument. They're not embarrassed to have this argument on the train, right? So she gets up away from him to get off at the next stop. And I'm trying my best, because there's a bunch of people. I'm not the biggest guy. And this young man was much taller than me, much bigger than me. So I'm like, it's eating me up inside, because I feel like I should say something, but then I don't want to put myself in any type of danger, right? By saying something, right? So she gets up and she walks. And again, I stand on the train by the door. I always stand by the door in case anything goes down. I'm out, right? So I'm standing there, and she comes over, and I have my earbuds on, and I take out one earbud, and I say to her, you shouldn't be in something like that, right? Say it low enough for him not to hear, but for her to hear, because he's still sitting at this time. And she gives me the most ugliest, meanest look, like almost like, what are you, you know, like, who are you? That type of look.
Right.
You know, I'm giving you advice to get you.
Oh my God. Like you don't deserve that. You're better than that. You're giving a good advice. That,
and she looks at me like, who are you?
Right.
You know, it's like the mentality is like, yo, like, what is wrong with you? And then another incident, we were up in Smyrna. We had a convention center in Cobb County, right? So my daughter had a basketball tournament. And so we out there bouncing the ball during like intermission of the tournament, because they had like 3 games that day. So we were there all day from morning to night, right? And her team is playing. So we just went outside to get some air, you know, like, let's get out the convention center. So we out there dribbling, and Alana's dribbling, doing the little dribbles and everything like that. And this couple is fighting. They're arguing, da-da-da-da. And all I hear is, pah, right? Not a smack. Homeboy took her phone and smashed it, right? And I see my daughter here, right? And I'm like, yo, same thing as a train. Dude much bigger than me. He just smashed the homegirl phone. So I know he angry. You know, what am I going to do? You know, should I sit here and allow my daughter to watch this man? Like, and he jacked up the girl's shirt. Like, he was like really abusive, right? I couldn't just sit there, you know? So Crystal's trying to tell me, chill out, don't go over there. But I'm just like, I can't. I got my little girl right here. Like, if I'm sitting here watching this, what type of signal am I sending to my daughter? You know, that's the first thing went in my head, is like, what type of signal am I sending to my child that this is okay? Like, for a man to do this to a woman, I don't want her ever going through that. So I started walking over there, right? So Crystal runs and get a security guy by the parking lot. You know, like, yo, my husband about to go over there and deal with this guy. You need to come with him. You know, she go over and get the security guy. The security guy come running with me. I'm like, dude, I can't. I got my little girl there. I'm gonna say something to him. I'm not gonna put my hand on him, but I'm prepared. I got my keys between my knuckles. So if he say something, he getting popped. He getting popped straight in his eye. I mean, it's gonna be the quickness. He ain't know it's coming. So I got my keys ready. He says something slick, or he raises a hand, balls up the fist. I'm watching every movement. I'm a sock him, right? And I'm gonna help her out, right? So I'm walking over there. He gets on the phone, start calling 911. Thankfully, he calls 911. Dude chills out. But you want to know what's sad? The young lady leaves with him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Go back to this idea, like homeboy just smashed your phone. He just smashed your phone. And she still leaves with him as we're pleading with her. Like we're pleading with, because at this point, I'm not terrified no more, right? Like I'm already over there, already got the keys between my fists. I think he probably saw me with the keys between my fists, right? I got the other security guard guy with me. And I'm talking directly to her. I'm ignoring him, right? We're ignoring homeboy. He cursing up a storm, going off. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. We ain't paying him no attention. But she leaves with him.
That a lot of people know not to get involved in that situation. Even with your daughter there, you could have, on alternative, what I would have done is say, hey, look, sweetheart, you see how they going at it? This is what's wrong with that situation. I don't ever want to see you in this situation. You see how he's acting, you see how she's acting. You even could have told her, look, see how they leaving together? You need
to, we had that conversation afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem me, I'm gonna be honest, I probably would not have approached that situation, but done what Sean said, definitely talked to my daughter when I left and straightened that out. You were brave that time. I ain't gonna lie, you're brave.
For real though. You could have got shot.
But a lot of women in those situations, and I'm not a psychologist, but they will tell you that a lot of women, like, and you said, I think one of y'all said this earlier, they look at that is love.
Yeah, they look at it as love.
They said, well, he must really love me. And many women say, no. Many women say, no, that's not how I look at it. But you stay with that person after that person has put his hands on you before, because and let me say this, and unfortunately, it takes an older woman to realize that, because a lot of younger women, they're allowing this type of abuse to happen at early ages. And so they literally have to learn that, look, that ain't cool. But by that time, they may have 1 or 2 kids, divorced or out of relationship. And so I think what we're trying to do is just, make sure that number one, women stay alive, and number 2, make good decisions. And number 3, if there's signs, look, you need to, and a lot of time, not all the time, there are signs before something violent does happen.
Listen, the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act, or FVPSA, provides funding for the ongoing operation of a 24-hour national toll-free telephone hotline. The hotline can be accessed via the nationwide number of 1-800-799-SAFE, also 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. The hotline is an immediate link to life-saving help for victims. It provides information and assistance to adult and youth victims of family violence, domestic violence, or dating violence. In addition, family and household members and other persons such as domestic violence advocates, government officials, and law enforcement agencies, and the general public. Services are provided without regard of race, color, nationality, religion, gender, age, or disability. Assistance is available in English or Spanish with access to more than 170 languages through telephonic interpreter services. The hotline provides the following services: crisis intervention, domestic violence education, safety planning, directly connecting callers to service providers such as local shelters, referrals to agencies that provide legal, economic self-sufficiency for sexual assault, elder abuse, children's, and other related services. God bless.